Hello, everyone. Glad to join you today in the cab with the Fendt 514 again. So today we're going to look at the Variotronic and explore some of the features that it has to offer. I'll look over most of the basics today on tractor functionality, basically on the terminal side of what Maynard was talking about, changing some of the settings that he referred to, and just some basic screen layout material as well. We'll look at that. So I think we'll get started with the overview of what this terminal looks like. You will see with this Fendt classic Tier 1 terminal that it's split into 4 quadrants, 4 different sections. There's a button on the side here with a picture of 4 quadrants as well. To that screen here, we can see how we can divide our screen up into those different sections. So for example, I could maybe have my video camera on in here, and maybe my let's do isobus there, map here, and video camera here. All right, and then tractor information will always be on the top right. Hit the green check mark, and we see a bit of a different layout than we had. Of course, we have no isobus implement or a camera at this point. I'll change that back to information screens and GPS. While we're in this screen, we see day and night mode as well. Useful if you're doing a lot of nighttime work. Screen obviously is touchscreen. You can also use these buttons to navigate here, up and down, and just select with the OK button here. All right, so now we're going to dive into the tractor settings. So this is our tractor quadrant here. This is what we call an information menu. So we're basically just seeing tractor information at this time, cruise speeds, fuel consumption, so forth. If I click on the tractor icon, it opens up the tractor main menu. So on the right-hand side, I can see the different menus that we can then dive into. While we're on the main screen here, we can again see our cruise speeds. We can see what valve color is on what lever on the armrest. We can see our current 3-point hitch status, various things like that. So I'm going to work down from the top here on what these different buttons do. All right, so front hitch. Let's go into our front hitch menu. This tractor is simply equipped with the standard front hitch, not the comfort front hitch. That means it does not have a separate dial on the armrest to for depth control. So therefore, it's a fairly basic scenario here. Top bar here is speed of front hitch lift. I can click on that. It's now circled in red, and you can see that okay with the glare. I'm seeing there's a little bit of glare there. Ryan, is it okay? Do I reposition myself?
I think it's fine, Leon.
Okay, great. So I'll turn the scroll wheel here on the right-hand side. I'll turn that to change my hitch lifting speed. And then we have the same thing for your front hitch lowering speed. And then finally the timer for the front hitch, again, because this one does not have a depth control knob. And so I can turn on my timer with the clock feature. At that point, it will look at this time value here, which is currently 1 second. We could make that at 12 seconds. As soon as I turn my timer off, it will not look at that value. I'm going to go back out in the bottom corner here. Just readjust a bit. There we go. Okay, rear hitch. Very much the same, but a bit more functionality. So this here is going to be our height limiter. All right, so when I have this at 82%, that means that the 3-point hitch will not be allowed to lift up past that 82% up position. I can again click on there, dial it, and it will stay under that position. So if I now go ahead and lower my 3-point hitch with the button on the armrest, it is now lowering. Okay, so we're now under that 77%. So now I'm going to lift my 3-point hitch, and it will stop at 77. All right. for your depth control, Maynard walked us through that. That's the actual dial on the armrest. That is this is basically depth control reverse. This is height control. This is speed of lift, speed of lower. This here is your 3-point hitch suspension. So if you're carrying a heavy 3-point hitch implement and you want to do some road transport, this value here is currently set at 7.7 miles an hour. Once you exceed that speed, your 3-point hitch suspension will be activated. So you can set that speed to whatever you want it to be. Probably you want it at a higher speed than what you're doing your field work, as you don't have that turning on inadvertently. This is your draft control. So on the left-hand side, it's full draft control. That would be a 0% setting for like plowing. And then on the right-hand side of this graph, we see a picture of a fertilizer spreader. That's position control. So at 100%, that 3-point hitch will not move at all. It'll be perfectly rigid. On the far left side, it will be much more fluid, I guess you could say. It's going to follow the contour of the ground. One more thing, this is priority. We're going to see this in the hydraulic settings as well. When you turn on a valve to priority, that means that if you're using multiple hydraulic functions simultaneously, that this particular valve will always be given enough oil. If for some reason you're demanding more oil than the tractor can pump at that given time, maybe running some hydraulic motors or so forth, it'll make sure that in this case, your 3-point hitch will have enough oil first, and then whatever oil is left will be diverted to the rest of the valves. We have some more 3-point hitch settings in here. So this is slip control. So presently slip control is turned off because this switch is off. If I turn that on, it is now going to be looking at this value here. So that is your percentage of slip that you want to allow. It's currently set at 15%. So let's say you want 17% maximum slip allowed. It is now set at that, and it will lift your 3-point hitch if it determines that you have more slip than that. And the same is, this is slightly different here. This is your sensitivity of that setting. So at 100%, it will be very sensitive. It's going to be constantly adjusting up, down, based on that draft load, 3-point hitch. And at 0%, it's going to be much less aggressive in how soon it will move that position. Okay, done with the 3-point hitch. We'll back out one more screen. We're back to our tractor main menu. We've explored front and rear hitch. We're now going to look at hydraulic settings, hydraulic valves. So here we see that all our valves are unlocked presently. That's because the switch on the armrest is unlocked. Maynard showed us that switch. So we're going to adjust several settings in here. It is noteworthy that if you have a Fendt 500 or 700 with a front loader, your yellow and your blue valves will always be ascribed to the loader if your loader is attached, if your valve block is connected. So while my valve block is connected, which it is currently, these two valves are going to be my loader settings. Presently, my loader extend and retract cylinders for lift and lower are both at their maximum values, 26.5, and that number is reflecting gallons per minute. So you can see if I click on there and dial that back, my yellow graph slides back. So presently, my loader will only lift at about half speed at 14 gallons a minute. And that is particularly useful if you get into these remotes down here and you want to run, your implement, maybe it has, again, a hydraulic motor, or maybe it's an apron chain on a spreader, various different things where you want to dial back that hydraulic flow for. So it's separate from the extend and the retract. Another thing, so we have, again, a number of buttons along the side with icons. I first click on the valve that I want to make changes to, and we can see how the colors change for these icons. So suppose I want to change the green valve settings. I click on the green valve, and now all these buttons are green, reflecting these buttons are tied to the green valve. All right, so I want to have my green extend set at 20 gallons a minute. And I'm going to leave my retract at 12 gallons a minute. Timer, we had looked at timer for the front hitch. This works exactly the same way. If my timer is turned on, a little clock feature will become active there in the black icon, black box here, and the time value it'll now be reading from here. So we could make that 1 second, we can make that 60 seconds. If it's dialed all the way up, there's a picture of an infinity symbol, which means constant, and that is how you turn on a hydraulic valve for a constant flow. Corn planter fan, for example. So now here again, we have a priority switch, works the same way as a 3-point hitch. You can only have one priority at a time. Unless you have a twin pump system on your Fendt 1000 series, you can have 2 priorities set simultaneously. So if I now set this as priority, my 3-point hitch will no longer be priority. This is soft start. So again, this setting is true for any color. Soft start, when it's switched to the left like it is now, you see that graph is on an angle and an increase, meaning when I activate my green remote, it'll start softly. If I want to have an abrupt start with full pressure instantly, I simply tap that icon. It changes to the square setting on the graph, which means full pressure instantly. Soft start is quite typical. That's default. Okay, we have this little icon here. If you have front hitch, you have with a front remote, you're going to have your front remote setting in here working exactly the same way. Let's go back out of that. So now we're going to look at our valve assignments. So this is how we change the location on the armrest of what lever, what fingertip valve, what button does which valve color. When your loader is hooked on, yellow and blue will always be locked to your loader joystick. So that's important to note. Your loader joystick will be yellow and blue always when your loader is attached. If you want to use those 2 remotes for the rear without removing your loader, feel free to simply unhook the coupler in the front. We have the green valve presently assigned to the multifunction joystick on the left-hand side. Suppose I want to make that the red valve. I can click on there, make it the red valve, make a check mark. Now both the left-hand and right-hand remote switches on the multifunction joystick control the red valve. The same is true for the fingertip valves. So those are the ones on the armrest, 4 in a row. So you can ascribe any color to any valve. And if the loader was disconnected, you would also see blue and yellow in this list. You can put front hitch on the fingertip valve, you could put rear hitch on, front remote, whatever you like. That is how you reassign valves, and very useful if you have, sometimes you hook up to implements and then realize later that your settings are not the way you wished. You wished you had your cultivator up down on the multifunction joystick instead of the fingertip valve. You can easily switch it here without having to unplug the hoses and move them. Okay, back go to hydraulics. I think we explored that. We're now going to go into engine and transmission settings. So engine transmission, we have again our cruise speeds, cruise 1, cruise 2. Simply click on them and dial like you change any value in the Fendt terminal. Radar speed, we have our load limit control. So not everyone is clear what that does. Basically, your load limit control will tell the tractor how much engine load it can have before the transmission starts slowing down. So, for example, you're doing some forage harvesting, you're on the harvester with your tractor, full type harvester, and you want to have this tractor slow down as soon as you have an extra heavy load in your windrow. So I'm going to turn this to manual, and I'm going to dial that down to 1%, all right? So just as an example. So now if your engine comes under 1% load, this tractor is going to start slowing down. So it's going to be very quick to slow down. If I have that setting at 30%, your engine will go under 30% load. In other words, lug down a fair ways before your transmission ratio changes. So I think default is around 14 or 15%. If you use auto mode, the tractor will decide for itself. That's most popular. So it'll vary then for road work versus PTO work. But there's also many operators who have strong preferences in what percentages they like to run at, and that's what that's there for. You can do that manually. Memory. So we have forward and reverse speed memory. By default, they're turned off. What that does is if you're, okay, so typically when you shuttle directions from forward to reverse or vice versa, your speed will simply be a copy of what you were going in the opposite direction. So if I'm going 3 miles an hour forward, I switch to reverse, it'll be 3 miles an hour in reverse. This might be useful if you're packing trench and you always want to back up faster than you want to push up with your blade or bucket. So suppose you want your forward speed to be 4 miles an hour. I'm just going to change that. 4 miles an hour forward, but you want to back up at 6 miles an hour. All right. So now let's go to 6. Now, when you turn these on, forward and reverse are turned on separately. Now, when you flip from forward to reverse, it'll go to 6 miles an hour. When you flip from reverse to forward, it'll go 4 miles an hour. When they're turned off, again, default, it'll simply copy the speed of what you were traveling. This is turbo clutch, also by default turned on. I don't know of a good application where that would not be turned on. It basically lets you press the brake pedal to come to a complete stop if your engine RPM is not too high. The rare application that has a really hard pulling load at very low engine RPMs might make your turbo clutch slip, which is where you would want that turned off. But again, I don't know of many applications that require that to be turned off. Welcome to chat some into the comments if you have personally come across one of those applications. We have here the min and the max settings on the joystick. We have min and max. So those are your engine RPM saved memories and useful for PTO speed. So for example, if you were 540 RPM, PTO runs at 2100 engine RPM. That's where you would set that. Then whenever you start your PTO, you can hit the max button, like we discussed a bit ago here, and it'll target that engine RPM. Okay, I think we discussed all that. We should look at TMS yet. So TMS settings, remember that's your button on the armrest where the tractor decides itself how much engine RPM it needs for the given task at hand. So in the TMS settings, this lets you customize some things. So here, for example, maybe every time you have your you touch your hydraulic valve, you want the engine to rev up to 1200 RPM minimum. Okay, so we're going to change the minimum TMS setting to 1200. All right, we're going to turn on our hydraulic switch. So now every time I use a valve, for example, raise my loader, the engine will start revving up to 1200 RPM minimum. This is particularly useful in the case of PTO work. So suppose we have our max set at the very max and our minimum set at 2000 RPM for PTO speed. All right, PTO switch turned on. So now, whenever my PTO is turned on, the engine will have a minimum RPM of 2000 RPM, which is exactly what you want. So that actually saves you from having to hit the max button on your multifunction joystick. You can simply turn on your PTO and RPMs will take care of themselves. So it's for direction of travel and also 3-point hitch. Just a couple of little quick things on fuel consumption. You can see your current average fuel consumption. You can see your saved amount that you used in the since you last reset. You can also see currently we're in the English setting, the US setting, so we have gallons an hour and miles per gallon, which is not necessarily a useful feature, but you could do gallons an acre if you have the implement set up. Okay, we have that covered. I'm going to go back out of here. I think we discovered everything there is to know about the tractor settings. We'll look at teach-in here at a later session. One thing with the main menu is that these are actually live buttons as well. So for example, if you want to, if you see that your green timer is turned on there, we can see that. Suppose now you want to change that. If I click on that, it'll take you right to the green remote setting, and you can change that to whatever you want. Same is true for the location of the valves. If I click on there, it takes us into the sign control elements page where you can move which valve is on what lever. Service diagnostics page tells you when you need your next service. Okay, back out of there. I think we covered all of that. We're now going to just very briefly look at the administration page here. Actually, before we do that, I'd like to introduce Quick Jump to you all. So Quick Jump is this page over here. Not everyone is aware of the possibilities there. So, okay, so for example, I want to change the location of my remote valve. And what I'm used to is having to go into the tractor page, then into the hydraulic menu, then into assign control elements page. All right, 1, 2, 3 steps. But I do this often. I want to do this all the time. I want a quicker way. So while I'm on this page right here, I'm just going to hold whichever button I want to assign to that page. I'm going to hold this one just for a few seconds. It has changed description now to this page. So now on the home screen, instead of doing 1, 2, 3 steps, I can simply hit this button and we're in. That is true for any page in your Fendt Varioterminal. If there's one where you go in particularly often, maybe it's your engine transmission page and your TMS settings, we can now have the TMS icon turned on in your Quick Jump page. The other menus in your info screen are simply information menus. For example, 3-point hitch status, where it's at, hydraulic valves, where the timer is turned on, where the location is of the valves on your armrest. And there's also an information screen on fuel consumption and information on teach-in, which we have not yet talked about. That's your headlamp management. Again, don't change settings in here, it's simply information. Okay, let's look at the administration menu just a really wee bit yet. Back out of here. So that's this picture of the screen here. Go in there. So 1 tap opens the menu, 2 taps opens the page. It's true for all the menus. 1 tap just gives you the menu, 2 taps gives you the actual page loaded on 2 screens. So we can discuss profiles. We're going to do that some more in the future training tomorrow. For now, we'll look at how to change date and time. So I'm going to go into the picture of the wrench in the screen here. Here's my time page. Change that, change your date, change your screen brightness, change your language, which noteworthy here, there's 2 different English languages. If you go to, currently it's on English US. If you go to English Great Britain, all your settings will be metric instead of standard. So that will be useful for some of you to know. We can also do night day mode here. We can do a screen cleaning mode. We can clean your screen and hit the escape button here to get out of it. And then a screen calibration. If you have trouble with your touchscreen not being functioning properly, you can do a quick calibration. And we're done. Okay, that is that. 12-hour, 24-hour time. Ryan, did I miss anything? Is there anything else to discuss?
I don't really think you missed anything. There's one question here regarding Quick Jump. Is it possible to set Quick Jump for the AC in the 1000 series? Or I guess AC and radio in the 1000 series. So I guess any units with infotainment.
Yes, with infotainment, it will be possible. Unfortunately, this tractor doesn't have the infotainment screens. I can't demonstrate. But if you have the Fendt Classic cab with a page for your infotainment, okay, so how often are you going to go into your date and time page? never, right? But twice a year. But suppose I want to go into this page every so often. I'm going to just hold this button. Done. Okay, and exactly the same thing for radio. Go into your page, hold the button. Anything else, Ryan?
No, that's all for now. So I just back to that question. It sounds like we can do it for the radio. We can set the radio to quick jump, but obviously the AC isn't possible because
I'm
the
sorry.
AC isn't tied into the Vario terminal at all.
That's right. The AC controls on the Fendt 1000 series are on the front dash. Sorry. Yeah.